In Search of Knowledge, Past, Present, and Future is a series of unique programs that are designed to show our history as a living history rather than just a list of names and facts about people in the past. It is a Black history lesson, a vocational tool to interest people in various occupations, and a mini museum containing books, artifacts, and photos of notable Blacks, bringing an original art exhibit directly to the classroom. Welcome to a special edition of In Search of Knowledge, the Constitution. Last month, we began an exploration of the Constitution. It only contains 27 amendments, but those amendments have a major impact on our everyday life. It would be impossible to do a thorough examination of the Constitution in a single episode, but my hope is to generate interest in it so we can begin to understand our rights and why we have to work to protect them. Last month, my interns, Starletta Evanson, Nathaniel Brown, and I visited the National Constitution Center and the Constitution High School. We talked about the three parts of our government, a number of amendments, and the importance of having our voices heard. You can see that episode on PhillyCam or on YouTube. Tonight we are going to be talking about the issues of immigration and the freedom of the press, because I wanted to continue discussing the importance of having the freedom to express ourselves and how we are exercising that freedom here in Philadelphia. With the First Amendment, we are promised individual rights, including the ability to express ourselves, explore our talents, and use our creativity to improve our lives. My guests tonight are Ryan Saunders, a media video expert, and Eric Nzeribe, publisher of Funtime magazine. Both are naturalized citizens. My guest is Mr. Ryan Saunders, who is a staff member at PhillyCam. I've asked to speak with him because of this journey that I'm taking on understanding the Constitution, because he's involved with the media on a constant daily basis. And so, Mr. Ryan, welcome to In Search of Knowledge.
Thank you.
I know that you're used to being behind the camera, and I really appreciate you allowing me to tape you. So let's get right to it. Ryan, why is the Constitution important to you?
This Constitution is important to me because without it, it could be definitely an opportunity for leaders and those in power to abuse that power. And, not being a native-born American, coming from another country and knowing how those rights of individuals can be easily taken away by either one individual or a group of individuals, the American Constitution has stood for the rights of the individual.
So where did you come from? What country are you from?
Originally from Trinidad and Tobago, and although it is a democratically, there's a constitution, of course, and it's a republic, I should say, not a democratic. It's a republic patterned upon the British Parliament system, so there are elections and people have that right to vote. So I should say we are more or less aligned with the rights of the individuals, very, very, very much so.
So are you a naturalized citizen? Are you a citizen now?
Yes, I'm a naturalized citizen, and so I do have the opportunity to participate as an American citizen in this democracy, and have opted to do that in the last couple of elections, which I've been privy to participate in.
Ryan, you mentioned that you're a naturalized citizen. Can you tell me when you became a citizen?
I became a citizen around 2012, and I have been living in the United States for over 20 years. And so folks may wonder, well, why have you taken that long to become a... One, I was a student studying. When I first came, I studied. So becoming a citizen, so you would have to have a number of years before you have the opportunity to become a naturalized citizen, 5 years. So after those 5 years, the cost is another prohibitive factor, actually. So being a student, grad school, undergrad, and then the prices of becoming a citizen and applying and stuff, very exorbitant. Even back then, it's even more so now, I believe. The factor that sort of determined my becoming a citizen, the main factor was the previous, I would say the administration where Newt Gingrich was the Speaker of the House. There was a move to clamp down on immigrants, whether you were either illegal or not. So the current clamping or threats of immigrations and immigrants has been going on, and there was a Newt Gingrich at the time wanted to put these very, very restrictive laws in place as Speaker of the House for immigrants, and I there and then sort of made a determination to become a citizen.
Okay.
Most immigrants do become citizens or want to, but there are others who always have their homeland in mind. They're going to be going back. They're not going to be staying here. This is a temporary space that they want to. So initially becoming a citizen, it could have been either here or there for me, but that period of time where I realized that my rights as somebody who's living and working and paying taxes could be affected definitely drew me and made me more aware of what would happen if I were not. So, but also as a media maker here, I see a lot of people, a lot of individuals who come in and who have ideas that are different from the general mainstream. And those voices needing an opportunity to explore and explain themselves, different ways of thinking, different ways of doing things, different ways of agreeing with what is the established law of the land. And that's important to have that different voice.
Can you also share with my audience a little bit about your background as working with Scribe Video Center as well?
Yeah, sure. Working with Scribe Video Center, I've over the last at least 10 years, I've been conducting various workshops there in editing and camera operations and stuff, working with community organizations who, they come into the Scribe Video Center and they have ideas that they want to explore, explain their stories as either individuals or as organizations, community organizations, nonprofit organizations. They have their stories to tell about their neighborhoods, about their individual lives, about personalities and public figures who have worked in the communities and have done tremendous work. One of the surprising things is that I've noticed living in Philadelphia, and Scribe has over the years done a community visions project that is amazing to me because I learn a lot of the history of Philadelphia and the neighborhood that I live. I would have never been privy to some of that if I wasn't part of Scribe. So communities being able to tell those stories.
And that goes back to what you were saying about the First Amendment.
Yes.
Because two of the programs that I know that I've watched through Scribe has been about the Great Migration, learning about over 6 million people moving across this country at one time. And then you also did the community videotaping of the various Muslim communities, because I didn't realize that there were so many different kinds of Muslims in it. And if without those kinds of programs, we can't get that information.
Correct. Yes, it's amazing, and other places that don't have that ability or those systems and those opportunities in place, where those kind of voices would be seen as counteractive or going against the grain of the system, so to speak.
And so PhillyCam's role in all of this is what? Just tell us about that briefly.
PhillyCam's role is of a similar vein in that individuals or organizations in the community in Philadelphia have the opportunity to come and join PhillyCam as members and produce content that will air on the channel. So for members, it could be anything. It could be a cooking show, it could be an oral history, or any idea that the member has.
And PhillyCam is supported as the community access station. And I have to admit, I didn't know what PhillyCam was at first, and I've come, and I have to admit, Ryan has saved my butt time and time again because my skills aren't always up to par. But that's what a center like this does, and Scribe does. It allows people who don't have a voice to learn how to produce those kinds of shows.
Yes, yes. And I think also one important thing is that members learn a new language, the visual language, which is so prevalent today. And when we talk about access, there are quite a number of communities and individuals who don't have the access that a lot of us take for granted, cell phones and computers and being able to communicate in that way. I think that is another important fact that could be totally sort of not taken proper note of. Members are learning a visual language as opposed to something written or oral, which is important in today's world.
And that's why it's so important that we understand that the Constitution guarantees us a right of the press in the First Amendment. And so being able to do this, even though you may not have the money to buy a cell phone, you have the right to do it. And so a place like this and Scribe gives us a chance to come and express those thoughts.
Mm-hmm. Yes, coding skills to another level.
And that's important because it's not enough to just have the right through the Constitution. You've got to exercise that right. And editing is an important part of doing a production. So I thank you. I didn't want to take up too much of your time, but I really appreciate you allowing me to take a time to talk to you about the importance of the Constitution in the field of media.
Thank you.
My second guest tonight is Eric Nzeribe, editor of Fun Times magazine. My co-hosts are Starlette Evanson and Nathaniel Brown. So we want to start by asking Mr. Eric, give us a brief, if you can, explanation of your life.
Well, my name is Eric Nzeribe, and I am originally from Nigeria, and I studied my first degree in Nigeria, and then I came to America where I did my master in publication management at Drexel University. I've started the magazine since 25 years ago in Monrovia, Liberia, 1992, and when I migrated to America, I started it all over here. We have a couple of offices and correspondents around the world.
And my co-host Nathaniel has a question for you.
Does fun times represent something? Like, is it an acronym or is like a special meaning to it?
Well, Fun Times represents the magazine. The magazine started in Monrovia, Liberia. During the civil crisis, there was war in Liberia, and most of the media outlet had things to say about the war, the violence, the poverty, and we thought that at the end of the tunnel, there is light at the end of the tunnel, so there will be laughter and joy even after the war. And we thought that we could cheer people up even during the war, so we started Fun Times magazine. We had a lot of jokes, we had a lot of cartoons, and our first advertisement was, if you read Fun Times and you don't laugh, we refund your money. So that was how we cheered people up.
Give us a little information about who you are directing the magazine to.
The magazine is targeted to the diaspora community, African diaspora community, which includes immigrants and the black community in general.
Okay. And you're into what year of your publication now here?
About 25 years. In America, we are barely 6-7 years in America.
Okay. And you are total 25 years?
Yes, the magazine is 25 years.
What are you most proud of about the magazine?
Well, it's a platform, it's a voice for people that don't have the voice. We are a niche audience, especially the African and Caribbean community. This is a voice for us. So I think that is it's just a platform so that people can express themselves. It is something that we use to accentuate the positive about us, the culture, the people, their achievements, what they have done in this place. It takes a lot to be an immigrant and run two homes, one in the motherland or in the Caribbean and another one here. So if you can overcome all those challenges and achieve something, we want to feature you, we want to showcase what you've done as a role model for other people.
Okay. Eric, I'm glad you brought up the issue of immigration because Star has a question to ask you about that.
Why is there so much attention being paid on the immigration issue?
Well, America is a country of immigrants to start with, and it's easy. The rhetoric, the presidential rhetoric, made immigration an issue when practically, but for the natives in America, every other person migrated to this country. And you can go back in history as far as you can go. When the Irish had problems here when they came, and so many other nationalities. It seems like the African and Caribbean community, when you mention immigration now, it seems as if you are targeting the black community, African and Caribbean community especially, because we have immigrants that come from Russia, you have from Europe, and they are not as much a point of discussion as the black immigrants. And I think it's misplaced, such rhetoric or such accusations that immigrants take the job of Americans. I think it's very misplaced, because if you check about the entrepreneurs, the contribution of immigrants to the community or to the economy is so much. The percentage is astounding, almost, I'm not very sure, but we have a lot of immigrants, a lot of them are entrepreneurs, either by choice or by circumstance. If you don't have the language, if you can't communicate, it's difficult to get a government job, a civil service job, unless it's interpretation. So you're forced to find ways to support yourself. You could be a Mexican and open a corner grocery store, or you could be African and open a store to sell some items. But sometimes you are forced into being an entrepreneur, and I think they contribute a lot to the economy.
So one of the questions that I have, and we've been talking about this in working with my students, why is it so important? Why do so many people want to come to America when they have other countries they could go to in the world?
Well, America is the land of the brave. It's the greatest freedom you have on earth. So at least it has been until maybe the current regime. So it gives opportunity for people to fulfill themselves. And that is, so you have a lot of people that are self-motivated, people that are self-starters. They come here, there are no limits to what they can become.
Give me an example of one limit that people would have in their country that they would not have here.
Well, infrastructure. If you're coming from developing nations, you don't have the infrastructure, you don't have the road, you don't have the road network, you don't have electricity, you don't have water on a constant basis. And when if you're a small business and you don't have electricity, you run a lot of overhead trying to run your business. So if you can take some of these things for granted, then your creativity can flourish.
And I think we take a lot of that for granted. I mean, when I talk to people and they say they don't want to get involved, and I say, well, you know, you've got your electrical systems, you've got your water systems, all of this that we take for granted are part of the reasons why people want to come to this country, because it's well established. It's not going to change just because your president changes or your senator changes.
You're right. You know, there's a structure in place, infrastructure is there, and you can just take whatever idea you have and run with it.
All right, Nate.
How did you become a citizen, and were there any challenges trying to become a citizen?
Well, being in America is a very tough, is a tough place to be. As a matter of fact, we don't have streets paved with gold here. You work practically for everything you earn here. You earn it through hard work. So when I arrived there, I arrived via Monrovia, Liberia. So I was publishing in Liberia, and as I mentioned earlier, we had political crisis over there, and Fountain's office was burned. So that was why I came to America. And because I came here, I could I was a political asylee, because government forces burned our office in Liberia. So to that extent, I was able to get a path to being a permanent resident. And then since 2009, I've been a citizen of the United States.
Eric, part of my purpose of doing this program is to get people interested in the discussion. And one of the questions that came up from the interns was, how does the media, or how do you view the racial situation in this country, given what you just said about the tone that was set during the election?
Well, you see, the administration has made it such that the average black person would think that the average black immigrant is running away with their jobs. So trying to create a division between the black race. But the truth of it is that there's nothing like that, you know. So I think it's about education, creating some awareness and making sure that people know the truth. Maybe this person is lying to them, is not telling them the truth, is taking advantage of people that are vulnerable. I mean, how can you convince people at this age that producing coal is better than moving on to natural gas or renewable energy?
And that's one of the issues that we have to address, is the fact that there are a lot of jobs available. They're not available in the old technologies, like you said, of coal. But there are thousands and millions of jobs waiting for people to learn technology. And some of those individuals have recognized and have come forward and said, listen, I had a job in the cold. I realized that it was closing, and I went back and got technical education. And they're encouraging other people to do that.
Right. But, you know, you have to educate these people. Sometimes, well, if you are maybe almost at the age of retirement, transitioning to maybe some of these new technologies may be difficult. Mm-hmm. But still, that doesn't make it right for somebody to come and promise you that they are going to go and open up the coal mines at this age and time. You know, so I don't know.
Okay. Eric, one question I wanted to ask you. We've talked a lot about different topics about the United States and about immigration. What made you decide to become a citizen, and when did you become a citizen?
Well, I became a citizen in 2009, and I really can't consciously say this is the particular reason. I think it's a process. You become a permanent resident, and then after a certain number of years, I think 5 years, you can choose to take the exams and then the test, and then become a citizen.
But why did you want to become a citizen of the United States?
There is no particular reason.
Okay.
It's a process. You become a permanent resident. 5 years later, you become a citizen. I think it gives you opportunity to vote. It gives you, probably it may give you one or two more rights and rights, constitutional rights, but I could do my business as a permanent resident,
Okay.
you know, and I don't think I had any particular limitations, and I'm not running for any office, so I don't think there are particular conscious efforts. But of course, when you become a citizen, then you are able to send for your own family. You know, it's easier if you're a citizen than if you're not a citizen, so you can send for your family to join you. So it took me almost 11 years before my wife and family joined me here,
Okay.
which is tough.
And I know that you recently traveled back home to Nigeria. Did you have any problems leaving or coming back in the country?
No, like I mentioned, if you're a citizen, you know, you can go and come. As a matter of fact, if you're a permanent resident, you can go and come. If your visa, you are in status, you can travel and come. I think the misguided effort or executive order that wanted to exclude people, even permanent residents, they were very misguided, and the judge, some of the judges really put it where it needed to be.
And people have already said this is a nation of immigrants. We were we were not here first, and so all of us have come from some other country.
Right.
Okay. If we can gather to march 1 million strong, then why can't we gather in small groups to resolve one small problem in our own lives? If we can spend millions of dollars on anything and everything, then why can't we put money aside as individuals or a group to accomplish one small financial goal? If we can put aside our differences and speak to each other without anger or calling each other out of our names, and give love and respect to each other for a few hours while marching, then why can't we come together for a week to work on solving one small problem? When we recognize that we have to begin the most important undertaking in our history of saving ourselves, our children, and our communities, that in order to survive in the 21st century, we have to focus our time and energy on loving ourselves for ourselves, then we are marching more than 1 million strong.